All right, enrollment is open for fall classes for City Arts and Parks and Recreation. Classes begin this week and run through mid-November. You can visit cityarts.org or wichita.gov for more information. Looking ahead at the agenda, today the Mayor and Council will review MOUs for the development of the new AAA Baseball Stadium, discuss contracts for cultural funding, and more. For the latest City of Wichita news, we encourage you to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Cox Cable Channel 7. Good morning, Mayor Longwell and City Council.
Good morning. Thank you, Megan, and nice to have you all join us this morning. And we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a couple of council members that are not going to make it this morning. Well, actually, James is at a funeral, and Councilmember Meissner will be here shortly. But we'll call the meeting in order, and they have an invocation by a lot of people's very favorite pastor, Reverend Dave Henyon. We're lucky to have you this morning. He's with Harvest Community Church, and then following that we'll have Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us for both of those. Pastor Dave, always great to see you.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, this day, 17 years ago, we were reminded of the challenges of our world. A very complicated world that we live in now, and yet, Father God, we thank you for all those who put their lives on the line and went in there, and still today some are dealing with the after effects of working that scene as first responders. And I pray for those too who lost loved ones and the sadness they still feel in their hearts, and the part of our own heart of this country that we feel, and yet we're reminded too of how important government is. And I want to thank you today for Mayor Longwell and this city council who sits here and helps our city in planning and deciding and giving people the opportunity to live well with each other. We thank you for this city. It's a blessing to live here. And we're so privileged, Lord, with so many of the things that they also have provided to make this a stronger community. I pray for a blessing on their work today and all that they do, and for those who serve them, for police and fire, and for all the administrative staff and the building departments and all the departments that serve us in this community. We thank you, God, for this wonderful blessing that we have in Wichita. In your name we pray, Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Dave. We feel fortunate to have you in our lives, so we appreciate all that you do. We have approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 4th. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, I move that we approve the September 4th, 2018 meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Robin Ulmer, Criminal Justice Reform.
Do we have Robin Ulmer with us this morning? Don't see anyone coming up to the podium. So, Madam Clerk, next item.
Consent agenda items 1 through 24.
Any items that need to be pulled for discussion or clarification on consent agenda? Seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda items 1 through 24.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Repair or removal of dangerous and unsafe structure, 1940 South Meridian Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good morning. Chris Labram, MABCD. This is bringing back the condemnation case that was deferred on the 12th of June. The City Council conducted a public hearing to consider condemnation of the dangerous and unsafe structure at 1940 South Meridian Avenue. At that hearing, the City Council voted to defer action on the property and granted 60 days to make the repairs. So since that time, the owner and contractor did have MABCD and a structural engineer out to the property. At that point, the contractor was actually cited by our department for several of the business practices taking place there and some of the major code violations. The owner did remove that contractor from the project, hired a new contractor. They also the structural engineer began the report. None of that was ever completed because there was actually 2 arson-related fires that took place about 2 weeks after all of those meetings at the property. So those fires the first fire did not do a great deal of damage. Second fire completely destroyed the second level of the structure and created a great deal of additional structural damage. So it was, there were some questions at the last hearing about the documentation that the owner had. They were hopeful that some of that met the structural engineering requirements. Those were actually just structural documents that came with some of the components they bought, such as roof trusses and those. So we were able to get that all squared away, but then unfortunately this occurred at some point in there. No structural engineering report has been received. We obviously would have had to be a different one at this point. The new contractor also did walk away from the job at that point, said he would not get involved any further. The structure at this point is unsecure, and we have in the past weeks not been able to contact the owner. The pictures do demonstrate the extent of the damage. So at this time, we recommend that we close the public hearing, adopt the resolution declaring the building to be a dangerous and unsafe structure, and accept the Board of Building Code Standard and Appeals recommended actions to proceed with condemnation, allowing 10 days to start demolition and 10 days to complete removal of the structure. If any of the above conditions are not met, the MABCD will proceed with demolition action and also instruct the city clerk to have the resolutions published once in the official city paper and advise the owner of these findings. I'll gladly stand for any questions.
Any questions at this point? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench and turn it over to Councilmember Blueball.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'd like to make a motion to take staff's recommended action.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing for project plan tax increment financing for the Union Station Project Area 2 plan.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The item before you is a public hearing on the Union Station Phase 2 project plan. This public hearing was set back on August 7th when the council first took the action to set the hearing. The district was established in 2014, approximately 10 acres. That includes the renovation of the former Union Station building and the out parcels. It's planned to be developed in 3 phases, and this is the second phase of the project. The map here depicts the TIF district and as well as the project plan area, which is in the middle of that. This image shows a little bit better what we're talking about today. So you can see on kind of the right side of the image was phase 1, where they did the freight depot and the Rock Island depot, as well as the plaza in front of the Union Station. The plan today is to renovate the Union Station terminal and the express building, as well as the parking lots and all the infrastructure surrounding that. So this will be a project that includes renovating both those buildings with historic renovations, as well as adding about 33,000 square feet to the express building, which is on the south side of this, reconstructing all of the parking, as well as adding pavers and plants and adding additional parking to the project. This is a little bit more close up, where you can see the store frontage, the second floor, as well as, again, those pavers and the planters, and just another image of how the plan is proposed to be developed. This rehab project will include both those buildings, the Union Station Terminal and the Express Building, as well as that additional second floor for about 30,000 square feet, as well as that parking and the pavers and that landscaping. And the TIF eligible portion of this project is about $3 million, which includes demolition, the earthwork, the site improvements, other general TIF eligible expenses, as well as the soft costs included in that project. Overall, I believe it's around a $24 million project for this phase. The entire project's over $50 million. The developer agreement was actually approved back on August 7th, but I was going to kind of just recap how this project came together with the fact that this is a pay-as-you-go TIF, so the city is not issuing any bonds on that, but it will be reimbursed to the developer for those eligible costs as those tax increment is generated. The developer is providing the parking easement for free evening and weekend parking, and they have agreed to start construction no later than 1 month after the execution of the agreement, in which some of the work has already begun, as well as having substantial construction completed no later than December 31st of 2020. The parking easement with the agreement for the free nights and weekends was done through a parking easement for the 283 spaces. As well as the city did contribute for mid-quarter improvements. And then this last step here is the project plan, where it would be the pay-as-you-go TIF reimbursement for approximately $3 million worth of TIF eligible expenses. The recommended action today would be to close the public hearing and adopt the ordinance, or approve the ordinance adopting the Union Station Project 2 project plan. It does require a 2/3 majority vote to adopt that project plan. Representatives from the developer are in the audience, and I stand for any questions.
Questions at this point? Don't appear to be any, so we'll go out to the audience and see if anyone would like to speak to the council on this agenda item. Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench and turn it over to Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we take staff's recommended action.
That's about as simple as it can get. I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing and issuance of industrial revenue bonds, Wichita Properties, LLC, Kansas Medical Center, LLC.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for Wichita Properties, LLC. On June 6th of last year, the City Council approved a letter of intent for Wichita Properties, LLC to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $6 million to build a 10,000 square foot emergency center near the intersection of 21st and Webb Road. Wichita Properties is a partnership of doctors that is led by Mohammed Sandid. Wichita Properties is leasing the facility to Kansas Medical Center, LLC, which is led by Dr. Badr Idbase. The facility has 10 patient rooms or exam rooms, a laboratory, an x-ray, and a CT scan facility. You can see here on this aerial, Webb Road is running along the left side, and 21st Street is running along the bottom of this aerial. The area outlined in red is where the facility has been built. This is a photo of the exterior of the facility. These are some of the interior photos. On the left, you'll see a nursing station with some of the exam rooms around the perimeter. On the right, you'll see a waiting room. On the left here, you'll see an exam room, and then this is a photo of the back of the facility on the right. Since this is a new facility, there were no existing jobs. The company projects that it will add at least 22 new jobs by the 5-year mark at an average annual salary of approximately $107,000. The company has invested approximately $3.4 million and therefore qualifies for an 88% property tax abatement on a 5+5 year basis. As a medical facility, they must generate at least 30% of their revenue from outside of the MSA. The approximate value of a property tax abatement to the city on an annual basis is a little over $17,000 a year. A cost-benefit analysis was completed by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.75 to 1, a ratio 1.3 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.48 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $3.4 million for Wichita Properties, LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures. Steve Hadley, who is the Business Development Director for Kansas Medical Center, is here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Any questions?
Yes.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah.
In the green sheet, and you mentioned it as well, regarding the current economic development policy of 30% coming from outside the Wichita SMSA. Does this mean, when you're saying that 30% come from, in the green sheet it says comes from outside, does that mean they're going to close the facility in Andover?
No, they are going to continue to operate that. And in fact, when we were initially looking at this project, it was questionable whether they would have enough outside of the MSA to meet that 30% requirement. And they went back and looked at their facility in Andover and looked at where the billings were coming from in terms of their emergency facility specifically out in Andover, and found that they did in fact generate in excess of 30% of their business from outside of the MSA. But they will keep that facility open, and at least as of right now, it's very early, but they have not seen a reduction in the usage of their Andover Emergency Center.
So with this being a 5+5, at the end of 5 years, would then we review that to see if they are pulling 30%?
Correct. We'll look at the job requirement, the wages, and the fact that they need to be generating at least 30% from outside of the MSA.
Okay. Thank you.
No other questions will go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing no one, will bring discussion back to the bench and turn it over to Councilmember Meister.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. This is another addition to that Webb Road corridor from near Jabera Airport all the way down, even south of 21st, all on Webb Road, has a multitude of medical specialty. Every medical specialty group that you could imagine is there, including 2 heart hospitals that even the people that manage Jabera said that there's people flying into Jabera and so they can go get their heart treatment literally across the street. So this is another addition to that corridor, and with that, I'd like to motion that we take the recommended action as presented today.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 5-1. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Approval of MOUs with yes to no for the development of AAA multi-use baseball stadium.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Scott Rigby with the City Manager's Office. Today we're here to talk a little bit more in depth about affiliated baseball returning back to Wichita. But before we do that, I wanted to take an opportunity to talk a little about how we got here. This really started about 2.5 years ago as we saw a resurgence of the Delano area and the West Bank area with the new Advanced Learning Library beginning to finalize their final design plans. We saw the groundbreaking of the River Vista development back in late 2015, as well as the city going out for interest for the Delano Catalyst site. That spurred a discussion from mayor and council about how do we initiate a rejuvenation of the Arkansas River and a quality of life initiative. And the discussion was potentially exploring what is the opportunity to return affiliated baseball back to Wichita. In that discussion, we did a lot of internal discussion about how a new stadium or renovated stadium could accommodate new excitement to the area. And the idea is that this had to be a multi-sport opportunity, whether it be baseball, softball, soccer, concerts, festivals, and adjacent activities, including remembering the history of the NBC. And it's interesting as we look back at this, is the early discussion was what level do we think would really most likely fit into Wichita? And the idea is that it's probably going to be a AA affiliation. We looked at what the typical average attendance of 4,500 would generate and the excitement around other additional amenities such as for employers and hospitality in that area. And as part of that, we explored if, for example, you wanted to go to the game, or if you did not want to go to the game, what else could help draw activity down to this part of Wichita. And the idea was to continue our renovation and enhancement of the Arkansas riverfront. As we see the excitement up and down on the east side, particularly behind Drury, all the way up to Keeper of the Plain, is how do we carry that on the west bank, and a few representations of what we've done here locally as well as some other cities. Additionally, how do we connect, I'll call it the sports district, where the stadium would be, over to our performing arts district. And the idea at that time was to talk about perhaps a pedestrian bridge linking the two civic districts. So as part of that discussion, we explored a little bit the opportunity to where could we potentially search for funding that would be eligible to help in this endeavor. We explored star bonds, and a part of that star bond discussion, we initiated some consultants to look at what the economic impact could be with a new baseball stadium, museum, riverbank improvements, and pedestrian bridge, and what that would draw. And those projections showed upwards of close to 900,000 people would come annually to visit that portion of the downtown. This is a key discussion, if we remember back in our discussion with Cargill and others, as they looked at, do we stay in Wichita or do we go elsewhere as we recruit other companies, it's a talent discussion about how do we bring amenities to our community that allow them to recruit new talent as well as retain existing talent of all levels, whether it be millennials or Gen X or whatever age it may be. Fast forward 2 years, I know the mayor stressed that this was a very frustrating period to wait for 2 years plus for this announcement last week, but last week we were successful in having a AAA baseball announcement with the Pacific Coast League, with a New Orleans franchise filing a relocation application to the Pacific Coast League to relocate to Wichita. We were excited to get baseball back, but one of the conditions is to aim for that 2020 season. So much has to happen in order to reach that goal of 2020. In that effort, the city, minor league baseball, Pacific Coast League, and the team have been negotiating the two memorandums of understanding you have before you. We're literally still negotiating over the weekend about some final detailed points. And so these two MOUs detail the preliminary agreements and commitments for both parties. If we move forward and approve these two MOUs, the next step would be to draft formal agreements to come back to the city at a later time. Just heads up, we shared this image at the groundbreaking. One of the cautions we note too, as we talk to people, that was a visioning concept. That'll obviously change as we go through site planning and design aspects. So the next few slides are going to go through some of the detailed points. This may seem a little laborious, but I think for the television audience it might be good to walk through this. Under the first Ballpark Development MOU, this specifically talks about the development of the actual stadium, what would go into that. The first key is the goal is to create a new stadium of a AAA quality to house a Pacific Coast League team. And the city is committed to spend not to exceed $75 million to do that. That would include an NBC Hall of Fame museum as part of that $75 million budget, an allocation up to $3 million for that specific amenity. This was key, as we'll talk about later, in securing star bond commitments about not just baseball, but paying homage to the NBC and to the other amenities as a multi-sport facility. Obviously, it must comply to PCL and MILB standards for baseball. The stadium has to be completed by March 15th, 2020, or unless all parties mutually agree to extend that commitment or that date. The city will also spend an additional $6 million on the pedestrian bridge, riverfront improvements, and other critical infrastructure necessary for the ballpark development. We'll talk later on the $6 million is coming through star bonds as part of the funding commitment assistance from the state. As part of this, the city will assign a dedicated project manager acceptable to the team who will be responsible to the project committee and oversight committee. We'll talk about those in a second. In exchange for the city's commitment, the team will also agree to relocate the New Orleans franchise to Wichita, and that the team would contribute between $5 and $7.5 million for furniture, fixtures, equipment, also kind of known as FF&E in the ballpark. Essentially what I kind of explain is just take the ballpark, turn it over and shake it. Anything that falls out would be principally responsibility of the team. As part of this funding commitment to do the ballpark, the team is agreeable and the PCL is agreeable that a CID or Community Investment District would be formed in and around the stadium to assist in providing additional sales tax revenue to the project. As you remember, CIDs are additional incremental sales tax placed on an area to capture that sales tax to go back to pay for certain improvements. The team and PCL are agreeable to that once the ballpark is open and operational. Continue on, both the team and the city would agree that the baseball improvements would include, and these may adjust as we go into final negotiation, but these are essentially the agreed to terms today. 15 to 18 suites, 6,500 to 7,000 seats, fixed seats, a berm, and a party and group areas with a capacity of 3,500 people, resulting in a total available seating of 10,000, which is one of the minimum requirements for PCL and MILB AAA level games. In recent years, the party decks and the gathering areas have become much more favorable. What we find in the industry is less and less people want to sit in a fixed seat for the whole game. They want to get up, walk around, especially minor league, to see what's going on in different parts of the area. They want to go look at the bullpen, want to go see concessions, want to be able to see 365 viewing from wherever they are in the stadium. In additional terms that we've come to agreement on team facility size, concession space, and other improvements in order to meet the MILB and PCL standards. And again, these improvements will be funded at a city cost not to exceed $75 million. As part of that process, this will be a combined effort between the team and the city. We will also probably receive oversight and input from PCL and MILB. So a joint development process for the ballpark improvements will be created with the ballpark oversight committee and a project committee, which both the team and the city will have representation on. So the oversight committee, which I'll call it the hire committee, would be part of the process to select the design team, the lead contractor, any consultants necessary, set the baseball ballpark specifications, the seating, the budget. I'll call them the overall project managers for the project. Then on a day-to-day basis and to carry out those specifications, a project committee would be responsible for the day-to-day administration of the design and construction of the improvements. The dedicated city project manager would be then reporting to both of these groups. As a reminder, any MOU, development agreements, or additional documents related to this development agreement would be subject to MILB and PCL approval. So this really ties, this next one, ballpark management agreement, really ties to, I'll call it day two. So day one is we open the ballpark. Day two is how do we move forward after that. Under the ballpark management agreement, MOU, the city and team would agree to the following. The team recognizes and is aware of the history and importance of the NBC Hall of Fame and tournament. The team agrees, subject to Pacific Coast League scheduling, which shall take priority to make available use of the ballpark for the NBC tournament for up to 1 week each season. In addition, the initial management agreement will be for a term of 20 years with 2 5-year extensions. Initial management agreement fee that the team will pay each year will be $350,000. At each 5-year interval, the fee will increase by an average CPI increase over the past 5 years. In addition, the team will pay all utilities. The team will keep and maintain at ballpark the sites and fixtures, including interior and exterior of the ballpark site. And again, the goal is for us to build an amenity and then essentially turn that over to the team to manage the day-to-day operations, to function this facility, not just for AAA baseball. One of the things we've discussed with the team is excited about is their commitment to provide, I think as they've talked to the mayor and others in the past, to do 200 plus events a year at this facility. So this isn't strictly just baseball. The team would be responsible for the cost of general maintenance, staffing, and repairs of the ballpark, including the playing field. The team is solely responsible for any field maintenance except for any maintenance required as a result of city use. The team cannot sublease or assign or encumber its management agreement without the approval from the city. And with the exception of city-sponsored events, the team will retain revenue for all other events, such as tickets, concessions, sponsorships, parking, merchandise, and media. Continue on. The team and city will jointly work to secure a naming rights agreement for the ballpark for a minimum of 10 years. Proceeds will be broken out to first hard and soft costs, second up to $250,000 to the city, and third, the balance to the team. A key component of this, the team must play all the regular season MILB games at the ballpark. The team will support the establishment of CID, as we mentioned earlier. They'll provide security for the ballpark. As part of this, the city will have the right to use the facility for up to 10 city community events and charitable events per year, together with the allocation of resulting costs and revenue. So this is, for example, if we wanted to move events from Riverfest into the stadium for maybe it's a concert or a gala, we can do that here. And again, it's a 20-year management agreement term. Continue on. The city is responsible for capital repairs, replacement, improvements required to ensure the ballpark continues to meet the rules and standards of the PCL and MILB. As we know, over the years, it's a 20-year agreement with additional 5 years. Ballparks start to get dated after a certain number of years, and it's continuing an effort to make sure that's kept up to the standards of the PCL and MILB. The city and team in that effort will meet every 2 years to consider those needs and whether it's timely to do capital improvements and or replacements. And none of these capital expenditures shall be made without mutual agreement. As part of that, the city will set aside from funds received from the team after the 7th year, $250,000 annually into the capital reserve fund to be utilized for capital repairs, replacements, or improvements. One of the final items that we had to work through was an emergency air travel fund. This was driven particularly by MILB and Pacific Coast League. Pacific Coast League is an air travel league with teams spread out not just across the Midwest, but across the entire western part of the U.S. So an emergency air travel fund of $200,000 will be established jointly and if necessarily replenished annually to address those concerns and to ensure accessibility and frequency of air travel into and out of Wichita. Our goal is, as our airport and our air service continues to grow, that need would fall away. So understanding that and our commitment up to the 75 and up to an additional $6 million for the pedestrian bridge and riverfront, the city took efforts over the last 2 years to identify funding sources that would to handle these improvements. And one of the key ones, first off, was STAR bonds. That's sales tax and revenue bonds. This is the state program that allows a city or entity to capture the incremental increase in sales tax within a certain specific district in order to go back to pay for approved improvements. So city has received approval from the state. We have an existing West Bank. I'll show you a map in a second on West Bank, an East Bank Star Bond District that will be allowed to utilize to help fund this. And then we set up about a year and a half ago a West Bank Star Bond District. We set up this past year a tax increment financing district that covers a portion, the stadium area as well as some additional areas that would additionally fund into the stadium, as well as, if you remember, the Greenway project up near the Advanced Learning Library, that aspect. The CID we've talked about setting additional incremental sales tax in this area, and then finally the general obligation bonds to cover those costs. Again, we've been approved by the state for up to $40 million worth of STAR bonds for this project. I have a map here. These are the two STAR bond districts. The existing one on the east has about 9 years remaining, and the new one on the west has does have 20 years remaining. Those two allow us to capture incremental sales tax growth within those areas in order to help pay towards the stadium as well as the pedestrian bridge and riverbank enhancements. Again, tax incremental financing allows us to capture the incremental property tax growth within that area, allowed to help fund stadium improvements as well as the Greenway, as well as we've already previously talked about the CID. Just in conclusion, next steps, if approved today, the parties, including MILB, PCL, team, and city, will begin drafting formal ballpark development agreement and ballpark management agreement. Those will return for City Council for final approval. Our goal is hopefully early October we will be back with that final consideration. A key part of that is in order to receive final formal agreement and formal approval of the relocation of the team, we would be coming to agreement on those 2 development agreements. Also, just to take a moment, I know we're getting a lot of questions about key milestones in this process. 2020 is coming fast. It is an ambitious an effort, but we believe we can make that. So in September of this month, we'll release a demolition bid and as well as a design build request for qualification to RFQ. We don't have an exact date, but we anticipate in the next 7 to 10 days, one or both of those will go out. Our goal is hopefully in October of 2018, the demolition of the Lawrence Dumont Stadium begins. End of October, we'll have the selection design bid team. Remember, that will be the oversight committee with representation from the team and the city on that. And the goal is by 2018, end of 2018, the demolition of the stadium will be complete. Ballpark design will start. Left that one out there. In spring of next year, construction will start with the ballpark. Ballpark design will be through October through February of this spring, and then a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price, would be agreed to in sometime in about February, March aspect, and then construction would start in April of 2019 with opening day in April of 2020. So again, it's recommended that the City Council approve the ballpark development and ballpark management agreement memorandums of understanding, and that the City Council adopt the homeroom ordinance on a declaration of emergency basis. The purpose of the emergency basis is in order to us to, hit the market with bonds in order to secure those STAR bonds, because we'll start incurring costs if approved today on the demolition, design, architectural efforts. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Questions for Scott? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I understand this is an MOU, but I only got it about an hour ago. That's pretty frustrating and disappointing for us to try to get through all of this and understand all of the ramifications and then vote on it today. So with that being said, if we approve this today and we find stuff in here that we object to or have issue with, like, for instance, this is the first I heard about the air travel fund, which I don't believe we had with the Wingnuts. So if we approve this today and there's something in here we don't like or we have the opportunity to change that, correct?
I'll let if the mayor can jump in as well, but if we approve the MOUs today, we'll go through a lengthy formal discussion with all the 3 parties where we'll formalize those different aspects of the agreement. So we'll continue to have dialogue about what that means, what it entails, what it doesn't entail, does it fall off at certain dates. We'll continue to have those discussions where we'll flesh out what is 3-page or 5-page agreements today will most likely be 30 to 40-page agreements down the line. So there'll be a lot more detail, a lot more opportunity to do detailed negotiations on any of the aspects we talked about.
But approval today doesn't hold us to everything in here. Just to be clear.
No, but it simply said, what it does say is that we're making a good faith effort to get resolution of these issues with the team, and that we'll finalize those in the agreements, as Scott mentioned.
And also, just to be clear, this is just for the ballpark and the ballpark management. It has nothing to do with any parking or adjacent land, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
No other questions will go out. Anyone in the audience like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. And this has been a long time in the development, and so I appreciate both the work that everyone's put in on this and certainly the timelines that are laid out, and the Vice Mayor is correct. It's difficult when we get something at the very last minute and have to work our way through these documents, and I know it's been difficult trying to negotiate everything that's in here, but understanding that it will all come back to us at least provides us, some opportunity to digest this in more detail, because it's a fairly lengthy agreement, and and you did a nice job of sharing the high points in it, and hopefully we can reach resolution on the formal agreement here very soon. So with that being said, I would move to take the staff recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Settlement agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. Part 2. In order to resolve the situation with the Wingnuts and to come to an amicable solution and to prepare the way for affiliate baseball, the city and the Wingnuts have reached a settlement agreement that recognizes the existing lease that currently sits out there between the two parties. We have now reached agreement with that to terminate the lease. The agreement provides a financial settlement recognizing that the city has a contractual obligation to provide a stadium for the next several years, that the city had an obligation to make stadium improvements throughout the remainder of the lease agreement. The value of the severance is based on the number of years remaining in the existing lease and the anticipated city financial cost of repairs, replacements, and improvements over those same remaining years. The settlement agreement of $2.2 million to the Wingnuts will be paid out over several years and will be funded by management agreement revenue paid to the city by the new AAA franchise over the next 6 years. So as we talked about, the $350 in the management fee for the team, the AAA team, over those first 6 years of those management agreement payments would go to help fund this $2.2 million settlement. Therefore, it is the recommendation of the City Council to approve the settlement agreement and authorize the mayor to sign. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Meissner? So, again, thanks for explaining it. This is just part of what we knew we would have to do to be able to terminate this agreement. And the nice thing is we're going to be able to use the revenue stream from baseball to help us as we settle this agreement with the existing team. And so I move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
MILB baseball consultant contract.
Thank you, Mayor. As part of the process, as we went through to recruit affiliate baseball back to Wichita, we hired Beacon Sports Capital Consulting Group back in 2017 to assist the city in exploring the plausibility of attracting affiliate baseball back to Wichita. They were highly recommended by experts in the baseball industry. Beacon proved instrumental in identifying potential minor league baseball leagues. Would be double or triple or Pacific or international other leagues that will be available for relocation, and then approaching those entities on behalf of the city to gauge their interest, and if interested, initiate introductions and discussions between them, the city, and the interested party. Over this past spring and summer of this year, with the assistance of Beacon, we conducted extensive research into ballpark market comparisons, league comparisons, recent baseball stadium designs and costs, as well as assembled critical information in preparation for formal communication and relocation negotiations with the Pacific Coast League, minor league baseball, and teams. Based on Beacon's guidance and research, the city had a successful discussion this past spring and early summer. In early summer, city staff were instructed by PCL. We got PCL's Pacific Coast League and minor league baseball due to minor league baseball rules and protocols to continue to utilize Beacon as the authorized conduit to continue negotiations with the team, PCL, and MILB. They have played a key role in keeping the lines of communications open and following certain protocols. The current result of Beacon's assistance is the recent announcement of the potential relocation of the New Orleans AAA franchise to Wichita. This will be the final contract to compensate Beacon for their work performed since early June 2018, and for Beacon to assist in securing the final relocation approval and assisting us in formalizing the 2 baseball memorandums of understandings into legal binding baseball development, baseball park development and baseball management agreement documents. It is anticipated this work will be completed by the end of 2018. It is recommended the contract will not exceed $100,000. Funding is available within the 2018-19 adopted budget for the transient guest tax fund. Therefore, it is a recommendation of the staff that the City Council approve the contract with Beacon Sports Capital Consulting LLC and authorize the necessary expenditures and related budget adjustments. I stand for any questions.
So we're using transient guest tax to fund this agreement, so our visitors are paying for it. Thank you to all of those that have stayed in Wichita. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any other discussion? Seeing none again. We appreciate the help. Obviously, this was something that wasn't as simple as it might seem on the surface to navigate our way through there, and these are just certainly necessary agreements, contracts, part of the team that it takes to bring all of this to life. And so I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. The motion passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Management Agreement, Stryker Soccer Complex.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The item before you today is a management agreement for the Stryker Multisports Youth Complex. In 2016, the city took the action in partnership with the state to use Star Bond financing to renovate the Stryker Soccer Complex into a multi-sport youth complex that includes turf fields to allow for multi-year or year-round sport. Yes, sir.
Was there a first slide? Slide number 1.
It skipped over one. I had to go back to this slide as number 1. Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
And so with this renovation of the Stryker Sports Complex, it was redesigned to where it could host regional, national, youth and collegiate tournaments that would include soccer, football, lacrosse, field hockey, field sports, as well as other outdoor and indoor activities with races, drone racing, bands, activities like that. It's expected to generate a significant amount of out-of-state and regional visitors, which is part of the reason we use Star Bond financing for that. This project is anticipated to bring between 100 and 150,000 outside visitors annually and have about a $16 to $24 million economic impact, including about $2 million a year just in sales tax impact in the area. The multi-sport complex includes addition of the changeover to 10 synthetic outdoor turf multi-sport fields, as well as lighting to enable that year-round use, as well as the construction of an indoor facility that's approximately 135,000 square feet that can accommodate a full-size football, soccer, lacrosse, or field hockey field, as well as band, drone, and other indoor activities. This is a rendering of the championship field out there and the renovations. So you'll see there are renovations to the championship stadium, as well as that on the south side there, the 135,000 square foot indoor facility. As well as on the left hand of the slide, you can see some of those turf fields that are being installed. As well as this is the overall site plan for what is being done with the 10 fields, as well as the parking and the location of the indoor facility, and still the allowance of additional development on the north side. And this is all part of that Star Bond project. The primary function, again, of this multi-sport complex is to host tournaments and events where at least 20% of those visitors are outside of the state of Kansas and 30% of those visitors are outside of the MSA. The Wichita Sports Forum was constructed as an original project in the Star Bond district, where it's about 140,000 square foot indoor facility But that success is in hosting regional national tournaments in the current facility. But that success also was one of those key elements in which the state granted its approval for the Stryker as well, seeing that relationship, seeing the success of how well the Wichita Sports Forum was managing and hosting those tournaments, where in conversations with the Sports Forum in 2017, they had between 1.2, 1.4 million attendees going through their doors at that facility. I just want to kind of recapture, this was the original Starbond project for that Sports Forum facility with their indoors, and that's how they managed that one. Now going into the agreement for the Stryker soccer and multi-sport complex, the Wichita Sports Forum will be managing the daily activities of the complex, including the scheduling of all those regional and national tournaments and events, as well as just the standard operations and maintenance of that facility, including the field's equipment. They'll also be covering the operating expenses and having all the utilities in their names, the security, insurance, maintenance of that area. The complex will be available for city use and city events for 10 days per year as part of the agreement. But those 10 days are where the city would not pay a fee rental, but they would pay any additional cost for that actual specific event. There's an additional 15 days for the Stryker Field Charitable Trust. That's the organization that originally donated the land to do the original fields there. And so as part of that agreement, they have 15 days of that. Both of those set-aside days are intended to try and avoid those tournament times, because the full intent of this complex is, again, to attract those weekend and national and regional tournaments to come to the city and to play at the sports complex. So all parties within that agreement will come together annually to put together kind of that master calendar and plan out those dates of how these events would unfold. This agreement would have an initial 10-year term, but allows for 3 5-year renewal options. There are 3 incremental increases within the management agreement fee for those first 10 years, and then each 5-year renewal will also have a 10% increase on that. Either party with 24 months notice following the 5th year of operation can determine to terminate that agreement. If the city decides to initiate that option, it does require city council action to go ahead and terminate that agreement. This is the fee schedule that shows approximately, or shows how that fee schedule breaks down per the 2, 4, and 5 year operations of that. It comes to about $3.8 million over that time period, and that will also be there to help with the city with paying the replacement of the fields and any other maintenance that comes up, as well as generating revenue for the city. At that time, I'll stand to answer any questions. There are representatives of the Wichita Sports Forum in the audience as well to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Yeah. Hey, Mark.
Yes, Councilmember Meacham.
Could I ask if the Wichita Sports Forum representative could come up and add additional things that he may have overlooked?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lee, if you could come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. Even outside of this, it's an exciting time in Wichita. Exciting time with sports. Exciting time also for Stryker. Many months, actually years of work have gone in by a large group of people, a lot of which are in this room today to bring us to where we're at today. Just like the Sports Forum, Stryker is a true multi-sport complex. I mean, you saw the list of activities there. You might get a chuckle out of drone racing, but literally we've been talking to ESPN and those groups about bringing drone racing to Wichita, and it's a huge event. It has a great draw, and it'd be a fun thing for Wichita in general as well. But having that true multi-sport complex feel, it's a great thing to see when you have 3 to 4 activities of different types. I mean, take a snapshot of that list of lacrosse or field hockey, football, soccer, all going on, maybe 3 or 4 of those going on at one time. It takes a lot of very specific programming. Obviously, one of the reasons why WSF, Wichita Sports Forum, was chosen to do that. To name a few things that we've already kind of got on the calendar, Wichita Sports Forum came together with Visit Wichita earlier this year to submit a bid for the Pro Football Hall of Fame National Youth Championship. That's going to actually, we ended up winning that bid. It was a great partnership between us and the city to go after that, and that will be coming here in the fall of 2019. We are currently working with several state and high school collegiate for playoffs for site neutrality, because they would like to have that for football and soccer and other events that they would like to come and meet in a neutral zone as well. Rugby, I know it's not a huge sport around here yet, but we're also right now talking for the spring of 2019 about setting an exact date for a rugby tournament here in Wichita. So I mean, I have 4 kids, bringing them out to introduce them to different sports that maybe they don't see on a daily basis or a weekly, monthly basis around here is exciting in of itself. The Stryker management team has honestly, and WSF has assembled a first-class team to take on this, and it, you know, just like with Sports Forum, we learned that success in year 1 doesn't begin when you get the keys handed over to you. It begins 6 and 8 and 12 months prior to that, creating the programming and the websites and everything that the back end works, so that when the keys are handed over and the lights go on day 1, that there's things going on, that it's not dark for 6 months preparing. The preparation takes beforehand. And so a little bit of fruit of that labor. 2019, we already have close to about 11 tournaments already planned. Some states, organizations that have already shown either soft interest or actually firm commitments is Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas City, Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, Nebraska, New York, Iowa, Florida, Wyoming, just to name a few. And so we are already, because of the network, because of the national fraternity Rolodex that our team has, we've been able to reach out to those clubs, tell them what we have. Wichita is no longer a drive-through flyover city, that this is a destination place for world-class, first-class sporting events. Some dates for those tournaments, we have them in February, March, 2 in March, April, May, June, August, September, October, and 2 in November. So we've kind of got the year bookend a little bit, so now the goal is to go in and fill in the gaps. We're also working with a lot of NAIA, JUCO, NCAA colleges, again, for that site neutrality, that want to come in and bring in the football or maybe even lacrosse, field hockey, rugby, soccer, and bring those here and play what they call friendly games. A lot of, I guess, professional men's and women's adult leagues like to come in and do that, and so we're playing host to a lot of those as well. So, like I said, it's a great time. It's been a long road to get here. We've been all working on this for several years, but it's an exciting time. You drive out there at K96 and just drive down the highway. You can see the lights are going up or have gone up, and the green grass, and we're not watering it, and it's still green. So I can take any questions if you like.
Questions at this point for Timber?
Well, thank you, Timber. I just thought it was valuable for the council to hear. When you started the Sports Forum and opened in like December, and you'd mentioned that you had a full year of events scheduled, and I think a few of us kind of said really that we questioned that, and clearly your first year you guys knocked it out. One small question I had is Mark, you've said that on one of your slides 150,000 people, 120. I think that are you missing a zero there, or is that real?
That was from the study done by WSU, and it really was focusing just on the out-of-state attendance, and there was a range that we kind of went with the conservative range for the purpose of applying to the state, so that's the low threshold to meet on that one.
Okay, I would agree that's probably the low threshold. Okay.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple questions. First, I think Stryker's great for Wichita. My concern is with youth football has been kind of pushed over to Stryker. And as I'm reading through this agreement, it seems that revenues from concessions are going to be retained by the management group, and youth football could use more money. Is there going to be any cost added to them for using the field? Will they be able to use concessions to raise money, as we've seen League 42 do at McAdams with their concession stand? I do have some concerns about that.
It's a great question. We will approach each individual organization uniquely, not just paint a broad brush stroke. Concessions in of themselves the programming, not to get too detailed with you, but the programming behind them, and then all the supplies inside the concession stand. How do you divvy up then the cost of goods once they're sold? And so sometimes we may look at revenue sharing, sometimes we may just shut them down and say, okay, maybe you can do a food truck or something like that. So we'll do each individual event and treat it individually like that.
Okay. And will they be charged any more than they are now to use the facilities?
I'm not sure what they're charged now, but we'll try not to show any impartiality to anyone. We're not going to overcharge somebody just because they have maybe deeper pockets, or we'll try to. Our goal is to fill the facility. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So, Timber, I mean, I appreciate you sharing certainly an aggressive plan to fill up that stadium and or those fields in a multiple of ways. One concern that I do have, and you did not address it, was the simple fact that we're targeting some soccer league play. And it would seem to me that your focus ought to be on all of those out-of-town visitors and tournaments and drones and all of those opportunities you just said fills up the spring and the fall. Why the need to have a full schedule of league play there?
It's truly a three-legged stool in that each leg feeds off of the other leg with the tournaments and the leagues. And I'm not just saying soccer, I mean, you bring up soccer, but soccer specific, the tournaments and the leagues and the clinics and the field rentals midweek. We've seen this in Sports Forum, you've seen it all around the country, is that teams already, before Stryker shows up next year, they've already been playing tournaments. There are already a lot of tournaments out there. And so they are not going to come back and play weekend after weekend after weekend at the same facility. A lot of times even we will try to help a Kansas City or an Oklahoma City or a Dallas club as well host tournaments, so then they're going to patronize ours. And so there are off weekends, and there's a lot of off weekends. Case in point, we've got about 10 to 12 tournaments planned next year, call it one a month. There is a lot of other downtime as well that, we have even within our agreement time frames that we have to meet for field usage. And so we need to fill that appropriately. And so leagues are definitely one of those pillars, for sure.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's any other questions for you right now. So I do have a question for our attorney. When we look at this agreement, and we can obviously have the agreement as stated, such as the city can sever this agreement after 5 years with a council vote. That's without cause.
That's correct.
So if we have cause, if we find out that they're not meeting their obligation, we have the right to sever that at any time.
That's correct, and that's stated in the agreement. There are bases for default terminations specified.
Okay. I didn't want people to think that we're locked into 5 years if they're not upholding their end of the agreement. All right, we'll go out to the audience. Is there anyone that would like to address the council on this agenda? We just invite you to come to the podium and give your name and address, and we'll give you 5 minutes.
Mayor Longwell, City Council members, my name's Mark Ohm. I'm president of Sedgwick County Soccer Association, and I live at 1262 North Pine Grove Court here in Wichita, Kansas. Outside the soccer community, I think Sedgwick County Soccer Association is somewhat of an unknown, so I wanted to tell you first about our history and our organization. SCSA is a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization. We were founded in 1991. We're celebrating our 27th year this year. We have 8 members on our board of directors, 5 of whom are volunteers. One of those is myself. Over 4,500 youth soccer players age 4 to 18 currently play in our league each year. For this fall 28 season that's ongoing right now, we have 393 teams who will play 1,586 games. We are sanctioned by Kansas State Youth Soccer Association. our league operates at the city-owned South Lakes Soccer Complex near 47th Street South and Meridian. In 2004, we assumed full responsibility for maintaining South Lakes through a lease agreement with the city. At that time, the lease was signed in 2004. The city estimated their annual costs to operate it exceeded $250,000. Since 2004, SCSA has invested over $300,000 in improvements to the South Lakes facility. Major items include asphalt for the parking lot and fencing the entire perimeter. An $88,000 investment in the parking lot was just completed 2 weeks ago, and we also hire approximately 200 youth soccer referees and 50 adult referees for each fall and spring season. In the past 6 years, we've provided over $10,000 in scholarships for players who qualify for free or reduced lunch at their school. The reason I'm here today is because SCSA has been excluded from all the discussions related to the Star Bonds and the Stryker complex from the very beginning. It's very disappointing when a charitable organization that over the past 27 years has created and built the largest youth sports league in the city of Wichita that now has over 4,500 players to be completely left out of the discussion. We were approached by Wichita Sports Forum earlier this year, and from March through July of this year, we had numerous discussions and communications with them wanting to rent the fields at the Stryker complex. The last communication from Wichita Sports Forum dated July 7th, 2018 stated that we could rent fields at the Stryker complex for only the spring 2019 season, and they then asked us to discontinue our league. And we have no interest in shutting down our league. My understanding of the vision and purpose of the city's Star Bond investment at the Stryker complex is to hold multi-sport tournaments and marquee sporting events that draw people from across Kansas and neighboring states to Wichita. And that was all confirmed by people that spoke prior to me. For the weekends when there is not a tournament or event at the Stryker complex, during the spring and fall outdoor seasons only, SCSA would like to be the organization that runs a youth soccer league and rents the outdoor turf fields at the Stryker complex to fill those open weekends. Please understand, we emphatically support the city's vision for the Stryker complex. We are not trying to stop what's going on out there. We're simply asking to be a part of it. And at this point in time, we can't even use the facility. SCSA wants the Stryker complex to be successful, and we think we can contribute to that success. We ask the City Council to postpone approving the management services agreement on today's agenda until further discussion can occur amongst all the parties involved to find a win-win-win solution for the city, SCSA, and Wichita Sports Forum related to growing soccer in Wichita and optimizing use of the Stryker complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Doesn't appear to be any. Any other speakers?
Good morning, council members. My name is Myra Cundy. I live at 1228 North Pierce Avenue, Wichita, Kansas. I am a small business owner here. I coach youth sports here in Wichita, Kansas. I've coached soccer for the last 27 years of my life. I've coached kids, about 5,000 kids in the city of Wichita over the last 10 years. Have been lucky enough to play and coach my teams through Sedgwick County Soccer Association and watch that association grow the program in the Wichita area. I moved here 15 years ago because I was excited about the options that this country gave youth kids to play sports. And I look at this complex right now and I listen to Mr. Timber talk about all the cool stuff that's going to happen at Stryker, and I think that is fantastic. I'm a huge rugby fan. I would love for rugby to come out there. This is not an objection to the Stryker complex or what they are going to propose to do. What I am objecting to is that, what Mr. Longwell brought up earlier, is the league proposal in trying to come in and squash a non-profit organization that has been around for 27 years, that's grown Wichita. We wouldn't be sitting here today building a $22 million complex if it wasn't for what SCSA had done. We were just sitting here thinking, we're just going to build something and hopefully we'll build it and they will come. And I think that is huge, and I think you have to really think about that, what they have done for soccer in the community. And I think they need to be part of the agenda going forward in making that complex a great complex for kids. I think that, you know, one of the biggest problems here with youth sports, with youth soccer in America is that you saw the United States team didn't even go to the World Cup this year. You got to pay to play. And I see that these fees are going to be ramped up. These kids are going to have to pay more money to go and play soccer at Stryker Soccer Complex. I see that this is going to drive kids away from the complex. It's not going to bring them into the complex. And I think it's actually going to kill soccer in Wichita. I think it's going to drive a fork right between the middle of them. You have a player pool of about 4,500 kids, like Mr. Holmes said. You're going to have some of them want to go play Stryker, some of them are going to play SCSA. You're going to destroy the program. You're going to destroy youth soccer in Wichita. And I'm pretty passionate about that, and I'm shaking when I'm talking to you about it because I think that has been overlooked. The bigger picture has been overlooked here. We're seeing a great organization. I love the forum. I even rent it out myself. But I see them going in and just splitting the market here. I think there has to be a common ground. We have to find a common ground that everybody can win here, rather than somebody coming in and say they're going to drive a non-profit out of business because they've got a brand new, shiny new complex, and hey, come play soccer over here. Just my thoughts. I had written down a whole bunch of stuff and I went straight off on a tangent. So, I run my own small business. I'm all about, that thriving economy and driving that K96 corridor. I think it's awesome. I love Wichita. Like I said, I moved here and I sat down and settled. But I think that you can find a solution, or you need to find a solution. Look at that management agreement where we can all work together to grow soccer in this community rather than divide it and kill it off. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Meister, do you have some questions for him?
Well, I have a question for Mark when he's completed.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mark, did we not, did you or others, of course, Wichita is the largest city in the state, and then we, not the second largest county, but did you look around the state? Are we like the only city that has one soccer league?
As far as our size and even some smaller, yes, I believe there's like a Topeka Lawrence is kind of combined as the two. There's about 8 in Kansas City metro area. But as far as registered through the Kansas Youth Sports Organization, right now it's just the Sedgwick County Soccer Association is the only one. So, I believe YMCA and Sports Forum are both the two going forward to try and seek that licensing or the registration.
The YMCA is seeking a license for leagues?
That's my understanding, yes. And to join that Kansas soccer.
And Kansas City has 7 or 8 leagues?
Correct.
And Topeka and Lawrence have 2 leagues?
Yes.
How about any other cities?
I looked at those sites, and depending on the regions, average of 1 to 2 on those other cities that are smaller than Wichita, yes.
Okay.
I don't have that full list in front of me, though.
So when does the YMCA, they applied for a league sanction?
That's my understanding. I don't know their process. I had heard that they were going through about the same timeline as the sports forum was for seeking their registration or certification.
Okay. Just thanks for clarifying.
Yes.
Could I speak to that?
So Mark, we only allow the speakers to come up and share once unless the council members have a question. But we are still in open discussion, so are there any other speakers that would like to come up?
Hi, my name is Cherie Peterson. Address is 246 North Baton. Wasn't planning on speaking, but I just want to reiterate to that question that was asked. There actually is only one large league in Kansas City. That's the Heartland organization. That's the league that actually more competitive teams in Wichita travel to. For example, when my son was 12, once you hit a certain age and competitive level, you do travel to Kansas City. So I don't know, there are smaller leagues, they're more recreational. But the kind of league and the kind of sports that that Sedgwick County aspires for is a Heartland League, and that's the largest league in Kansas.
Yeah, I don't think we were trying to discuss if it was a large league. I think they were just saying how many sanctioned leagues that have applied to the state sanctioning body. And I think that's what Mark addressed. When you just look at the state sanctioning body, just like the YMCA, which is probably not a competitive league, is still applying for a state sanction.
My understanding is that the YMCA applied to sanction their indoor facility. That all that information be available through KYSA if you were interested in finding out more.
Okay.
So if you have any questions about leagues and why people may leave Wichita, I mean, to reiterate what Myra did say, I believe that it will split the number of teams that we have in Wichita, and more than likely you'll have more people that say, I'm not going to play this split, I'm just going to go straight to Kansas City. I think it's great. I was part of what was Evolution Football Club back in 2007 when they did take over, when they had Stryker for about a year or two. Eventually they had to give up because they couldn't pay the water bill. And at that time so Stryker, the dream of having it turfed and large tournaments come to Wichita has always been around, and we do support that. And I forgot to say that I'm the secretary of Sedgwick County Soccer. So, anyway,
thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Claycomb, did you?
Yes, I have a question.
For the speaker?
Yes, for the speaker, and then for Mr. Ohm also. So my question for the speaker is, you said that you think it'll split the league and that people will just travel straight to Kansas City.
Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have Mark
I have a question for
kind of
Mr.
work his
Ohm
way
also.
to the front. He was sleeping back there.
He was. So do those leagues play during the week here?
No, soccer leagues majority play on Saturday and Sunday here at Sedgwick County. When you play in Heartland, when we played in Heartland, you played Saturday or Sunday. They do have games Thursday and Friday, depending on the time. So why do I think they'll split? Because if you look at if you went on our website and you looked at the number of teams per age group, you're going to have certain, like Myra said, some people are going to go Stryker, some people are going to say, I'm going to stay on Sedgwick County. And then some people aren't going to want to take the bet, and they're going to say, hey, we'll just go to Kansas City. They're guaranteed they have, at each age group, they'll have 4 to 8 or 9 divisions with 8 teams apiece. So soccer, there is one league in Kansas City, that's Heartland is the league.
And so do they practice?
But they practice in Wichita. I mean, what we would do is we would practice in Wichita. We would schedule out our games, and we would drive up there 4 times a season to play doubleheaders. So.
Okay.
And why people go to Kansas City is competition. It's not turf versus grass. That's a total misnomer. No one goes to play just for turf.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Ohm, I have a question for you. So I just want to be clear. Are you suggesting that the SCSA League would like to move to Stryker? Move all games from South Lakes to Stryker? Is that what you would like to?
Again, my understanding of the purpose of the Stryker complex is to hold tournaments and marquee events, get people to come from outside to come to Wichita, okay? And Timber said that, the gentleman with the Economic Development group said that. And so what we're interested in is on open weekends when fields are available. And if they're gonna have 11 tournaments throughout the season, I think he said 1 a month is what Timber said. And so between that and the other sporting events, I understand first priority is tournaments and marquee events to get people from outside Wichita to come in. But I'm going to guess, and I don't know. I've asked about field availability, and I never got any information, okay? But there would be some availability left, and that we would be able to play league games and rent those fields when fields are available. We do not have to play our entire league out there. We could still use the South Lakes Soccer Complex, but have a few days or weekends when fields are available to play out at.
So you just want the ability to be able to rent fields at Stryker?
Yes.
That's really what you're asking for?
Yes,
okay.
That first and foremost.
Okay, thank you.
And now since I have the mic, can I address that other question?
Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't pass the email along to all of you this morning, and now I wished I would have. But yesterday afternoon, I contacted Carol Cleek, who is the president of Kansas State Youth Soccer Association, and I asked her the very question: how many leagues are there in the KC metro area? And Shree gave the correct answer. At least Heartland is it. They're the 600-pound gorilla. There is one other league, and that is the Sporting KC Development Academy, okay? And so they have so many teams. These are the younger age groups where they'll have their own league, and they have so many kids in their developmental academy that they are able to have a league themselves. But in the KC metro area, and I'll forward you the email from Carol Cleek when I get back to my office, those are the only 2 leagues in the KC metro area. Yeah, there might be one in Lawrence, there might be one in Manhattan, there might be one in Topeka, but in Kansas City with 18,000 soccer players, they're 4 times bigger than we are. They have Heartland, that's the major competitive league, and then Sporting KC's Developmental Academy.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I ask Timber to come up and?
Sure.
I mean, there's been some dialogue here. Let's.
Thank you again. I'll be brief. One of the things that was mentioned is teams are leaving to Kansas City. We hear that all the time. They're leaving Wichita to go to Kansas City currently. One of our goals is to bring those teams back. It was said about competition. Yes, we want to bring that competition. We want to provide a different type of league. We want to provide a different type of play as well. So we want to bring those teams that are driving through, flying over, driving out to Kansas City or whatever, and get them to stay in Wichita because they're leaving for a reason. I do disagree that one of the reasons is because of the turf play. Yes, there's always the purists and things out there and people out there as far as natural grass and everything, but the ability to not have rainouts, to have a consistent schedule and those types of items is huge. To have the lit fields is a huge deal. And regarding the affiliated leagues, YMCA and Wichita Sports Forum were both approved. It was said that I think that's pending. I think that we have to show a few teams that are registered come in a few months when the league actually starts, but we were officially approved about a week ago or so. And that was us and the YMCA were both approved as sanctioned leagues. In regards to, what SCSA has done for many years is truly great. It is awesome. We absolutely do not. I was accused of wanting them to demise or to squash them or whatever it was. That has never been my intention. We actually, as a management group, approached SCSA first to see about if there was a potential possibility of some sort of a collaborated effort, some sort of a merger, you pick the word, and that started the discussions that Mark mentioned that went on for several months. Several times we met with the board members. Several times Mark and I one-on-one met, or one time we met. We had several phone calls back and forth. And at the end of the day, the last offer that I made as far as, because true to what is being said here today, we need to control the programming at Sports Forum because we're held to a different standard because of the operating and management agreement. And so we have to control the mechanisms better. And so my offer back to them was, yes, hey, a collaborated effort for year one to see about if we could work a merger here, kind of a transition period, and then in our opinion, if we were to move forward with that scenario, that they would dissolve. They said, you know what, we don't like that scenario. In my email to him, I said, hey, no harm, no foul, no hard feelings. We'll continue with our league, you continue with yours. Not a big deal, we tried. And so I just wanted to clear up those things right there.
So, any discussion about applying jointly for league sanction?
That did not come. They're a 501c. We're a for-profit. There's a lot of different things in there that it probably could get a little hairy with that.
So you're saying the sanctioning body wouldn't allow a merger?
We didn't go to them and ask for a joint, no. just like the YMCA went and for themselves and got sanctioned for their leagues, we did the same thing.
Okay. Any other questions for Timber?
Yeah, so Timber, this follow-up from Council Member Clayton. So if there's an open weekend in April or May, can they approach you and say, hey, what's your schedule? And we got an open week, and you say, I got open weekend, and they say, we'd like to use it, and you say, here's the cost, and life goes on? What's that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will not exclude any, whether it be football, whether it be whoever, we will not exclude anybody from that. If we have an open weekend, we're not running programming there. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't want to just for them, that means anyone.
So I assume that there's a kind of a
if you want to come out and rent it for your family, you can that weekend.
All right. So there'd be like a fairly standard rate, because you do have financial responsibilities of
absolutely
basically a lease payment or operating payment back to the city.
Yeah, well, we will have, we do have a large commitment for that. And so, again, to the point that we need to control what we do out there, because we're held to a pretty high standard.
So I don't know how these schedules work, but if it's October or September today, and if they said, well, we'd like to, what spots do you have open in March? And if you say, I got 2 weekends open in March, and they say we want them, then you black your calendar out for that weekend because it now belongs to them instead of a lacrosse tournament or
year one is obviously because we're kind of programming as we go as well. We're filling it out. So year one, it's a little more difficult to project and plan because we're also trying to fill it out as we go as well. Right. We're trying to plan as much as we have in the last 12 months, but coming into year 2 and year 3, that becomes an easier conversation to have, yes. But yes, it would work similar to what you just said.
Okay.
Councilmember Claycomb, did you have?
That was my question.
Okay. And then the city of Wichita has something like 10 dates a year, or do we have more than that? Because I have a question for Timber on those 10 dates.
Well, the city of Wichita, obviously, like Timber said, can still request to use more on the normal fees, but we have 10 days set aside that we can use that with no rental fee. We would just pay the cost for whatever our event is. So if we have to have staff or security or referees, things like that, the city obviously pays those, but there's no fee rental to use it.
Are those 10 dates already set? Are they weekdays? Are they weekends?
The intent is to not try to book them during times that would be a prime tournament time, but that's where that master calendar every year would be discussed, to where if we know of upcoming events, we would go ahead and schedule those in.
So we keep saying prime tournament time, but I'm also hearing prime league time. Right. So not everything's prime tournament time.
It does say, I'd have to look to see for sure. The intent and the agreement addresses it very sternly, that says that the primary focus is to do those tournaments, but most people are not going to travel on a Wednesday for a tournament, and those are where they're working to fill those other times.
Okay. All right. I don't think I have questions for Timber then based on that. I guess my only concern, Timber, on that is you can say we want to work with them, but you also would then with this agreement have the power to say you can rent the 2 open fields next weekend, but you're going to pay us $29,000.
Well, could we say that? Yes. My character and integrity and my name in this town and how we have operated the sports forum, I think would prove otherwise.
And let me add, I said that earlier, is there a standard fee that you have right now for field rental if I called you and said I want to rent a field?
We are in process of generating those numbers. Okay. Obviously, we're not probably going to get the keys to the complex until, depending on construction, February 1st, maybe January 1st, hopefully. But so we still have a little bit of time to do that. But we're still, I would say that market rate would be the correct term for that.
All right. Thank you. Any other speakers? No other speakers. We'll bring the discussion back to the bench. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. This is a question for staff. Mark? For the management agreement itself, was there a request for proposals?
For the management agreement itself, no.
So we did not go out to bid for this?
Correct. It was, we worked through the purchasing department and the review, and it was determined that based on the direction from the state of saying, you know, part of your approval for these star bonds is based on this group, and we strongly encourage this group to move forward. That was how we proceeded on that.
And we're allowed to do that legally?
That's my understanding.
I believe the purchasing department did work with this, and I have not heard otherwise. Or I believe that discussion happened. That's the extent of my knowledge.
I mean, I have no doubt that Wichita Sports Forum can operate this very successfully. I'm just concerned with the legality that we didn't take this out for bid and allow an RFP process to be completed.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, we did have discussions with the purchasing department talking about whether or not we needed to go out to RFP or not. Discussion was what expertise were we looking for in managing this type of facility rather than strictly leasing the facility. The requirement of star bonds saying you need to go after 20 and 30% those populations that are out of state or out of region, and what entity brings that expertise. I did have some conversation at ICMA conference with 2 different groups that do these things across the nation that do sports management of these type of facilities. There's two options they can do. Is you can either contract with them to run it as I'll call it a recreational facility, day-to-day, general city use type of activities, or going after these sport tournaments. What you end up doing with those is you pay a fee for them to go out and recruit, as well as paying for the day-to-day maintenance of the facility. You're hiring them to be that recruitment arm. So as we came back, and as I came back and talked to purchasing, had that discussion about expertise at Wichita Sports Forum, as well as our conversation with the state, saying leverage that expertise and the success that they're having at the sports forum, their existing sports forum. If you can leverage that, and you can create a management agreement that allows them to operate day-to-day, but carry the cost, that'll probably be the best direction. The less cost to the city is still giving the best benefit. And that discussion, the purchasing department said, the city's in its prerogative saying you go sole source for that because of the expertise.
And have we had anyone approach us asking about this opportunity at all?
Other than those sports management groups that I met at the national conference and had a discussion with them.
Now, again, the terms of the lease itself are very good numbers. I have no issue with any of that. Again, I think Sports Forum would do an amazing job running the facility. I just want to make sure legally we were doing everything that we should to make sure we're transparent with this process.
Let me just add, Vice Mayor, to your question. We had different smaller groups saying exactly that. We would love to come and run the facility for football or soccer. But once we had the discussion that this is more than just a single sport facility and its effort is to do regional and national, a lot of them were stepping back saying, that's not our function. We'd love to participate just like a rental if, hey, we want to do a tournament or a league. And what our conversation is, absolutely you can come to the city or through our management agreement with Wichita Sports Forum, you can have those opportunities.
Thank you.
Councilmember Meitzer.
Thank you, Mayor. And Scott, I would agree. I don't know when it was, a year ago. I never received a formal inquiry, but did have a couple, at least, informal conversations with people just randomly calling or asking, well, can I run it? And I think Scott surmised it right. I just quickly explained it's multi-sport, and it's got to have a regional component, and it's a big apple to bite. And if you're interested, then call our business development, economic development office. And so it's basically an explanation. I think both conversations that I had, some might be a little bit bigger than my specific use, but it wasn't an email or a formal request or anything, but just conversations a year ago at least when this was in the news, basically. So,
and most of those groups were not set up to go do regional and national recruitments. They were more focused on their individual league or sport. Yeah. They just weren't set up for that.
Thank you.
I might add that I get a lot of calls about baseball still. But that's a different animal.
We don't have any conversations with the community on activities, do we? So my concern too is simply not that, I agree. I think, looking at this, I think Wichita Sports Forum Group probably is the entity to help fill this up with a wide variety of activities, from drone racing to tournaments of all types. My only concern is that we have gotten this far into it and we still don't have an agreement with the Sedgwick County Soccer Group that you've been negotiating with for a year. And I don't know why we wouldn't have an agreement worked out with them. And so my concern going forward is we don't know what the costs are going to be, but yet we're planning on all kinds of activities over the next, starting almost day one when we get the keys, as it was mentioned, handed over to us. And I think that's all Sedgwick County Soccer's asking for, is an opportunity to keep their organization going. Just at this point, they're saying, give us some open weekends that you're not going to be able to fill that up. And so I would love to see an agreement where the two groups work together, and so maybe they play most of their league games down at South Lakes, but they get to play a weekend or two at Stryker, and they're not going to get charged $25,000 a weekend for that to happen. And I don't know how we get there, and I get, Timber, the whole issue about integrity, but that's why we're signing agreements today. It's not about integrity, it's about putting it in an agreement. So I would like to see us do that before we sign this agreement, but it doesn't appear that that can happen at this point. I'll listen to my colleagues and see if there's some suggestions they have that maybe we can work towards to try and reach some kind of a mutual agreement that doesn't encourage Sedgwick County Soccer Association to go out of business, or just say, hey, you guys go do your thing, we'll do our thing. I'd rather us work together and do our things together. Councilmember Meissner?
Thank you, Mayor. Clearly we see what this management contract is supposed to do, no matter who does it. So it doesn't matter if it's Timber or AAA somebody, there's a baseball team, but one of the problems that may occur is that our agreement for Sedgwick County Soccer Association to use a massive deal is very minimal cost. And our park department shows up daily maybe to clean the bathrooms, and the city does a lot of maintenance down there as well. So, for instance, if they said, well, we want to use the facility for a weekend, is it a burden for the management company to provide everything that the city provides to the South Lake fields? I mean, I think if they want to use a facility, it should be fully disclosed. Here's a fair price, and here's your costs. It's not as simple of just showing up, getting out of the car and playing. And I know they hire referees, and they do probably some trash things. I don't know what all they do, but I know in our agreement with the South Fields, the city has some responsibility through our Parks Department to support. And we don't have that in this agreement to support what a management agreement's going to be for profit and pay X dollars a year to run. So I think they can get together, and I'd be happy to help facilitate a mutual get together to try to do a calendar of events. I'd be glad to because I've been involved in this thing from the previous one start. So I'd be glad to do that, but I think it ought to be fully disclosed that there's for-profit costs here, there's not-for-profit operating for a minimal amount here, and can the two get together? I don't know.
I totally agree, Councilmember Meissner. I totally agree with you, and I don't know in my conversations with Sedgwick County Group that they think they're going to get anything for free. I think they're willing to pay.
Right.
I would just hope that we could figure that out before we sign this agreement, that, hey, they're willing to pay, but let's work that out so that it looks like we're working together. My frustration is for someone to say, you guys do your thing and we'll do ours, and life is good, is probably not the direction I would like to see this city go in terms of, let's grow this soccer group together. I would just like to see us work together, not you do your thing and we'll do our thing and no hard feelings. I'd rather us work together.
Well, and we could bring in the YMCA, because is that a competition that affects this group? Is that same argument from the YMCA? Is there the same argument for West Side Soccer Club, whatever that association is? I don't mind helping facilitate soccer growth in the community, but it's not just this group against that group. There's other soccer stuff going on, and everybody pays some fee and whatever.
Right. Well, probably not. Some of the fees are relatively small, but right.
Probably so.
I get that. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add into this conversation, again, youth football, because traditionally it's inner city, Barry Sanders Field, Dr. Glenn Dye Park, Linwood, and being that they have been forced out to Stryker, I'd like to see some type of wording or this same conversation with them. What are those costs? What does that look like? And again, is there going to be any type of revenue sharing? And I'd feel more comfortable seeing that as well prior to signing this.
I mean, how long do you think it would take to get to that?
No one's moving.
So it's a lot to digest, and I don't know that we're going to sit here in the next 5 minutes and digest this. Can we just push this off for 1 week and have those conversations? And if we don't think that we can get there, we bring it back next week and potentially vote on it.
I can't speak on the soccer side. I maybe let Councilmember Meitzner and Scott Ribby talk about that. On the football side, this has been a contentious issue regarding youth football and where they're going to play and whether they should play at Stryker. And depending on the coach you talk to, they're either excited or feel put upon. So we can work through that with Parks and Rec, and I think within the next week we can figure something out that addresses these issues. I think the key to football may turn out to be some flexibility in scheduling and allowing some local fields that have been used in the past to continue to be used, and then Stryker for the teams that want to play at Stryker. But we'll work through that.
And so football could continue in a multitude of different venues around the city.
Right. I think all they were trying to say is we've got a wonderful venue here. Let's take advantage of it. But again, I don't think this kind of taken a life of its own, and I'd like to bring some peace to that issue, and we could try to get that done.
So I know Councilmember Meitzner's been working on this for a long, long time, and it's been difficult to get it to this stage. And at the last minute, everybody's lobbing grenades, and I get that. And it's not a fun place to be. But can we just pause for 1 week and then try and resolve some of these issues?
Personally, if I was running that for-profit with this obligation, and I tell my staff then, you know what, we don't have an agreement with the city, so you're calling, I was calling saying, hey, I hear you're having maybe a regional tournament. Do they say, well, we think we are, but we don't know?
Well, it sounds like they've already booked it with no agreement. He's already had dates set with no agreement.
He was, I think they were expecting, just like the sports forum, we didn't have this kind of conversation at the sports forum. So I don't care if the government wants to get involved, and then the government can get involved. Personally, I'm not. I think it can get worked out. If they want to pay a fee and use it, and there's open dates, it's as simple as that. I do agree with Brandon that I think football can be played both places. There'd probably be a mutual concessions or a percentage of profit stuff, or volunteers to do what Timbers Group may have to help with trash or something to earn revenues. I don't know. But if you want to delay it, you can make that motion. I will vote against it. I think this is we didn't have this kind of discussion on $75 million of AAA baseball. But we've got it on one group wanting to play soccer on a multi-sport complex. And I think if they want to play soccer, then good. Sign up and call 1-800-STRYKER and ask for dates.
Yeah,
Do we want to set the price? Do we want to set the price that he's supposed to charge?
No, but I would like to know what it is. I've heard rumors that it's as much as $25,000 a weekend. So, and that's my point, and I agree with Councilmember Johnson. I don't think we should force every football game to go to Stryker Field. That's not what this community wants in terms of assets that they've been used to utilizing and opportunities in some cases to play closer to their neighborhood. And that is an unknown still. We don't even have that information. And so I'm just asking for 1 week. Councilmember Claycomb.
So we brought football into this. I guess my question is, we're not forcing youth football to move to Stryker.
So according to coaches I've talked to, they are saying that they have been forced to play some of their games at Stryker.
Can somebody address that from staff?
So Robert, who's forcing games to be played at Stryker?
That would be our Parks and Recreation Department. The idea, again, was to better utilize that facility and to improve the quality of the program for football. There has been, again, I don't want to repeat everything you've heard. There's been some pushback by some of the coaches, and they were working on, I think, a compromise that will allow some games to be played at Stryker, some on their home fields. And I think all the practices are staying at the home fields as well. But again, that was an issue to try to improve the program. If that's not how it's perceived, that should be a very small part of this whole discussion.
Right.
And it's not part of the management agreement anyway. It's not in there.
No.
So, I've read that. I know that it's not. My other comment kind of echoes what Councilmember Meissner's saying, in that the Wichita Sports Forum, my understanding, their goal is to actually run this as a for-profit. If the market won't bear $25,000 a weekend, they can't charge that. So, and I understand a nonprofit may not be able to pay what a for-profit league, if there are any of those coming in, but I take it, Timber, you're going to charge market rates, what the market will bear.
Are you asking Timber that question?
That's okay.
All right. Councilmember Blueball.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just don't understand, my understanding is I am troubled if we're forcing people to go from McAdams or somewhere else, especially with the football, and having to pay to get on there. That's kind of a big deal. And the youth football league, as most people have free facilities, so if we're forcing these non-for-profits to go play on there, so. And I don't know, are we doing that with soccer too?
No.
Because I don't understand if they wanted to play or they were being forced to play, or if that was the same thing as our Parks and Rec department forcing them to play as well.
Right. Mayor,
yes.
First of all, we don't have control over the soccer programs, right? And so this is only about the city football league, and it's unfortunate that we're commingling that into today's discussion, because that's really a programming decision that needs to be reviewed, and a decision needs to be made regarding what we're going to do in putting them in this facility. If they go to Stryker, there are fees that go with playing on that field, but I don't know what's been worked out in terms of that. I think is absorbed in the league cost. I don't think the teams are paying anything more in order to play. But that's a separate program issue that I owe a council response on, that I don't think pertains to this management agreement. But I will get something back to you in that regard. And my position, again, is to provide flexibility to the teams and to the coaches to decide what they want to do and what makes the most sense.
Councilmember Meissner.
A question to the staff: does the ice arena, do we set do we even know what they charge for their leagues, and do we know what they charge for an hourly rate, and do we have any say-so in what they're supposed to do or not? The people that operate the ice arena. I know they
Mayor, members of council, I don't believe that we have a fee structure that's in that lease agreement. We have a revenue requirement in terms of what they pay us, and there's responsibilities for them in terms of maintaining the facility. We don't have a fee schedule that I can remember.
My recollection is they pay us a portion of revenue at the end of the year after they operate.
That's my recollection.
I don't think we're involved in negotiating what teams and what time of day and what weekend and how much, but that's just an example of an operating entity.
So I'm not suggesting we get to set the fees. I'm just trying to work out an agreement so that all parties know what they have going into it. But, so what's the will of the council?
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommended action of the staff to approve the management agreement.
And then, did I hear you say you would be happy, maybe not happy, but you would be willing to sit down with both parties and try and help negotiate opportunities for the groups to come together?
That's what I said I would do, and I'll stay to my word.
Okay. So a motion to accept the agreement as presented. I mean, I've already said I would love 1 week. I'm not trying to rain on your parade, Councilmember Meissner. It's just frustrating to get to this point. I will second this so it can go to a vote. I would still love to see some groups sit down. Again, Timber said on record, no hard feelings, he'll do his thing and they can do their thing. I'd rather us come together and do our thing together. But
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we delay decision on this for 1 week to allow time for discussion.
So I would second that one also for a vote. So by our council rules, we will take up the vote on the substitute motion first. So we have a substitute motion to delay it 1 week. Any questions? Cast your vote. That motion passes 5-1, so no need to take up the second motion. This will come back to us next week. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
2019 performance contracts for cultural funding operational grants.
Mayor, Council, John D'Angelo, Arts and Cultural Services. What's before you is the 2019 performance contracts for the cultural funding. There's 20 cultural funding contracts that are in front of you, 1 developing arts contract, and then 3 artist access. This is part of our annual review. The Cultural Funding Committee reviews these grants and makes these recommendations. They've been to you once. This is the contracts themselves. It provides an accountability, funding amounts are identified, performance measures and expectations are outlined, allows for, again, the funding amount remain the same as the 2018 level at the $422,553 is what was distributed or recommended to be distributed in 2019. I'll just click through these. If you have questions on the specific amounts that are being given to the organizations, I'm happy to respond to questions. Again, it was a good conversation with the committee. $417,500 was for the cultural organizations that we gave. We gave about $2,901 to Artist Access, and then $2,152 to a single group for developing arts recipients, and that's based on organizations. The total amount again was $422,553. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Any questions for John? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
One, two.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Donna M. Douglas, and a member of a RISE board. And we do have some members of a RISE board here, as well as members of the ensemble. Philip, would you please stand? We give you thanks for this opportunity, and thank you, sir, for the funding. The African-American Renewing Interest in Spiritual Ensemble, better known as a RISE. These fundings, or these dollars, will help propel our mission of performing and informing the people about the oldest, unique African music. The spiritual is one Wichita form also that's a traveling cultural ambassador. So with that, we thank you for these dollars.
My name is Don Fast, and I'm with the Wichita Chamber Chorale. I serve on their board of directors. The Wichita Chamber Chorale is in its 41st year of operation here in the city of Wichita. We're an auditioned group of professional musicians. We appreciate the opportunity to participate with the Arts Council, and almost 10% of our annual budget is funded through this funding that's received from the Arts Council. In a city, there's lots of things that make for a great city, obviously, and we oftentimes tend to think of the streets, the other kinds of opportunities. My wife and I have occasionally thought about moving to Santa Fe, to Portland, Oregon, or other kinds of places. And we keep coming back with the answer that we have a lot, if not all, of the cultural opportunities that some of these other places offer. So I strongly support your indication by approving this budget item and the way that you make a commitment to the arts in the city of Wichita. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers.
Hi, I'm Wayne Bryan with Music Theater Wichita. Just want to thank the city and the council for continuing to support the arts. It's really meaningful and very much appreciated. Thank you.
Wayne, we would have expected you to sing your way through that portion.
At least a shuffle step up to the
Yeah,
podium.
yeah. So thank you all. Any other speakers? We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any other discussion?
Nope, we got one more.
Nope.
I'm Amanda Alessi with the Great Plains Nature Center, and as you saw a few weeks ago with our strategic plan, this contributes to all that we're doing, adding to the culture of Wichita, and we greatly appreciate your contribution to the cultural funding. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being brief. Okay, no other speakers this time? I don't see any, so we'll bring discussion back to the bench. If there's no other discussion, again, this is something that I think we invest in that sets us apart from many communities, ensuring that we have a vibrant arts community on several different levels, and I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
General obligation bond and note sale.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sean Henning, Director of Finance, and I will also try to be brief. The item before you this morning is the bond and note sale that was held on September 6th, 2018. That was last Thursday. The sale was originally authorized by the council on August 14th, and the sale was held for 2 series of bonds and 2 different series of notes. To Provide a little bit of background. Temporary notes are customarily issued to provide interim financing for projects that are not yet complete or are in progress. The notes are retired most often using bond proceeds as a form of permanent financing, debt service cash, which we refer to as pay-as-you-go, and or other sources such as grants or other revenues. The city issues bonds to provide permanent financing for various types of capital improvements. For the Series 292 notes, those were sold in the principal amount of $48,435,000. It provides financing for approximately $40 million in GO at large projects and approximately $9 million in special assessment projects. We received a total of 4 bids. The successful bidder, and the award was made to J.P. Morgan Securities, LLC, and that was received at a rate of 1.93%. These notes mature in 1 year, and this rate compares to a 1-year treasury at 2.49%, so it's about 56 basis points lower than a 1-year treasury. The last time that we sold notes in March, we received a rate of 1.64, and that was 43 basis points lower than the 1-year treasury at that time. So we did a little bit better, although rates are higher than what they were in March. The Series 294 notes were sold in the principal amount of $3,630,000, and this finances primarily airport general obligation projects that are subject to alternative minimum tax. We received a total of 2 bids. The successful bidder was Oppenheimer and Company Incorporated, and we received a rate of 2.24%. These notes mature in 6 months, so they'll mature in March of next year. A 6-month treasury is at the very same rate at 2.24, and the next lowest bid, the other bidder, came in at 2.26%. So the bids were pretty tight in comparison to each other. For the Series 821 bonds, these are GO at large, and they were sold in the principal amount of $9,395,000. They mature over a period up to 16 years and provide permanent financing for arterials, various public improvements, as well as bike path projects. We had very good competition with a total of 7 bids being received. The successful bidder was R.W. Baird and Company Incorporated, and we received a rate of 2.55. A U.S. Treasury at a 20-year is at 2.98%, and the comparable AAA benchmark is 2.9% based on 20 years. So we are below both of those benchmarks. For the Series 822 bonds, they were sold in the principal amount of just over $16 million. This was to provide permanent financing for special assessment projects. We received a total of 9 bids, which is excellent competition. The successful bidder was again R.W. Baird, or Robert W. Baird and Company Incorporated, and we received a rate of 2.92%. These bonds mature over 15 and 20 years. And it compares to a 20-year treasury rate of 2.98%. And last time that we sold special assessment bonds in September of 2017, we received a rate of 2.3. The recommended action this morning is to close the public hearing as it relates to the airport bonds, ratify the award of the bids, adopt the bond ordinances on an emergency basis, adopt the bond and note resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any further discussion? I would move that we take the staff recommended action and award the bids as mentioned.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Meissner?
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
Cast your vote.
Thank you.
Motion passes 6-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Any appointments, comments this morning? Councilmember Blueball.
Thank you, Mayor. I got one appointment to appoint Dave Capon to my district advisory board.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
No appointment. I would just like to comment that on this National Day of Remembrance, that is a thank you to all of our first responders and armed forces out there who provide emergency services and security.
Thank you for sharing that. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. No appointments. Just want to publicly acknowledge our Park and Rec staff in District 1. They did a great job this summer with our summer evening rec program, Larry and Angela, and our other two centers for all of the diversity of classes that they have.
I have heard there's a movement to clone Larry.
That would be good.
It would be good.
And Angela.
Yes.
Both.
Yeah. Quality people. Councilmember Meissner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just agree and repeat what the Vice Mayor said about recognizing this day and the tragic losses that happened to the first responders and others, and appreciate all they do. So take a moment sometime today to have your own moment of silence.
You know what, we could do that collectively right now before we finish this meeting and do a moment of silence and remembrance for all of those sacrifices made. Again, thank you to both of you for sharing your thoughts on that, and certainly don't want to ever forget and important sacrifices that were made. So this brings us to the close of today's council meeting, and we don't have an executive session today. I guess the attorney's trying to be nice to us. That's right. So I would move that we approve the DAB appointment as mentioned.
Second.
A motion and a second for that. Any discussion? Cast your vote. The motion passes 6-0. And again, thank you all for working our way through a little bit of a difficult council meeting. There's a lot going on in this community, and I think we're all proud of where this community is headed, and it takes a lot of effort from a lot of people, and I'm obviously very happy with the direction that this community is going in and what we're building towards, and hopefully we're all doing it together and on the same page, and some of those discussions can be difficult, but I think they're worth having. And the fact that we don't always have 7 people up here that always agree is a great thing, is absolutely a great thing, because it allows us to have a better perspective of a diversity of opinions that I think makes this community special. And so I appreciate the diversity of opinions and discussion that we have up here, and encourage that every week, with maybe an exception of Councilmember Blueball. I'm kidding. So with that, I would move to adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Cast your vote. And we are adjourned 6-0 vote. Thank you all.